This is where things take their turn. DiVincenzo knows. Steph Curry, just watch him grab the back of the leg. There are a few sites more
How about the
disturbing.
fact that he scores on the possession?
Yeah, and he winds up making a bucket, to your point here, but just what do you see here, Jay, as you're watching him?
Somebody that's going to just struggle with any kind of quick twitch movement activity. That's what a hamstring injury feels like.
It's a hamstring strain. He would leave. He would not return. There'll be an MRI today. His team picked him up. Draymond Green.
Well, look at the floor spacing. Everybody talks about Minnesota playing bully basketball, not when you're playing 5 out.
Warriors have a 13-point halftime lead. On the other side, Anthony Edwards, no good. Buddy Hield has been terrific the last few games.
Big-time three-point shooting, probably having the best individual run of his career.
The Warriors with a 20-point lead there. Now it's Jimmy Butler. You know it's your night when that goes in. He would score 20. Warriors by 16. Now we're 8 minutes to go in the game. Timberwolves within 15. Anthony Edwards had a quiet night, though he gets the bucket +1 here.
Only had 1 point in the first half, but also felt like he forced a lot of his shot attempts in this game, started to find his rhythm late.
He would score 23. 3 minutes left. T-Wolves down 12. Anthony Edwards, that's his only made three of the night. They cut it to 9, but anytime they had a question, the Warriors had an answer. Next possession, boom, Buddy Hield. He would finish with 24. Warriors, a huge win. They knock off the Timberwolves in their building, but afterwards, all the questions were about Steph.
I talked to him at halftime. Just, he's obviously crushed, but, the guys picked him up and played a great game. And obviously we're all, concerned about Steph, but it's part of the game. You just, guys get hurt and you move on. Our guys did a great job of moving on and getting a great win.
He was a little deflated, but he didn't. He did try not to show it. He was just in the locker room, waiting on guys to come in, continuing to show that support, saying what he saw going on in the game, but it was a tough one.
So again, and Brian Windhorst joins the conversation for the first time this morning. He's in Boston, so is Monica, and Jay Will is here. Wendy, I'm writing down the words that we heard from both those Warriors there, from Kerr and from Draymond. Crushed, concerned, deflated. Tough one. We'll have an MRI today. Do we have any sense of what we're looking at here with this injury to Steph Curry?
Yeah, he's going to miss time, Greeny. Steve Kerr flat out said, they're game planning that he probably won't be available in Game 2. It's a hamstring injury. You know sports, you've been around for a long time. Hamstring injuries take time. I am not a doctor, nor am I going to make any aspersions here. However, I will point out that on Sunday in that Game 7, Steph Curry, according to the tracking data, ran 2 miles during that game. That Game 7 where they poured it all out in Houston. In the history of the tracking data, which does, Steph's career predates the tracking data, but every game he's ever been tracked, he's never run that much. So he comes off running on a 7-game series, play-in 7-game series, the most he's ever run before, and then 2 days later has to turn around, comes up with a hamstring injury. I suspect that he might have been susceptible to that, and he's never had a hamstring injury in his career. One thing I will say, the way this series is set up is unusual. It's every day through Game 5, and then between Game 5 and Game 6, there's 3 days off. So if you're looking at it, maybe that extra time could enable him to maybe come back later in the series.
I was just going to go there. Let's make it exactly clear when these games are. Game 2 is tomorrow. That's Thursday. Games 3 and 4 in San Francisco are Saturday, Monday, then back to Minnesota for Wednesday. And then, because the WNBA is using the arena Friday night, that Game 6 gets pushed all the way to the 18th, which is Sunday. That could benefit, one would think, a player who needs time to come back. Monica, the question is, what can the Warriors do without Steph Curry? They played a really good game and won it last night on the road. What chances do you give the Warriors of beating the Timberwolves in games that Steph Curry does not play?
Well, if it's more of what we saw last night, Greeny, led by Jimmy Butler, who we've seen take teams as close as you can get to the promised land and really empty out everything he has to give, they're going to be competitive. This is not a wash for the Wolves in terms of an opportunity to jump on a Warriors squad. However, obviously, and Jimmy Butler even said it last night, it is a different experience to be on the floor without Stephen Curry. Now, Buddy Hield has been shooting the lights out of the basketball, and we heard Draymond Green talk, particularly between games 6 and 7 of the last series, about understanding his power, his focus, his impact on his team. Curry's going to get into his bag in terms of building around Jimmy Butler. If the others, Podziemski, Hield, the whole gang, continues to support, this is still going to be a very formidable opponent. It really lies at the feet of the Wolves in terms of, are they going to capitalize on this team without Stephen Curry? But it still won't be easy.
I still think that the Warriors have a legitimate shot to win this series without Steph Curry. I know that sounds crazy. I know the gravity that he warrants when he's on the court. But one of the things people keep looking over is the fact that this was the best defensive team in the NBA once they made the Jimmy Butler trade. And when they made that trade, it's a very different defense than what the Wolves saw against the Lakers.
Right.
The Lakers play more of a contained defense. The perimeter pressure that the Warriors apply throws the Wolves off their rhythm. And that's something that Anthony Edwards and company is going to have to answer for. Plus, they don't have the same defensive rebounding or offensive rebounding opportunity, Greeny, because they play space out on the perimeter.
The Warriors have gone 9-3 in 12 playoff games without Steph. But the last one of those was a really long time ago. There were some of the Kevin Durant teams and things like that. So I don't know how applicable that is. Wendy, how about that part of it? What do you think? There are some who might look at it and say, all right, Steph doesn't come back, the Warriors are done, that's it. How do you see it?
Well, I thought the Wolves would be favored, in my view, in this series anyway. I think, but they did a great job defensively on them last night. The story of this game after Steph is that the Wolves only scored 88 points. If they're going to not improve offensively, they're not going to have a shot against any Warriors team. And Edwards and the Wolves have shot the ball horribly from three-point range the last two games. The worst three-point shooting over 2 games on record. It's something like 12 of 76. So they're going to have to try to hold that Wolves offense down, hold Ant Edwards down to open up their margin for error. But my view in this game, I was more focused on the Wolves' inability to score than how the Warriors reacted without Steph. We'll see if that continues.
I'll tell you who was not impressed with the Wolves. It was the coach of the Wolves. And in particular, he called out his superstar. Let me set this up for you here. The setup here is that the coach called out Anthony Edwards right after the game. As you see, Edwards 0 for 8 last night, most attempts and a half in his career without a make. Here was the coach after the game.
It starts with Anthony. You know, I thought he struggled early. And then you could just kind of see the light go out a little bit for a while. You're the leader of the team, and you got to come out and set the tone.
Coach was saying that he relies on you to set the tone from the start, and he didn't quite see that. Do you feel like you were off at all just in that department, or just kind of the way you started the game?
Nah. I feel like I played great defense. I just couldn't do nothing on offense, so.
So the coach calls out the superstar. The superstar didn't see it that way. How did you see it, Jay?
I love the fact that Coach Finch called him out. I think, look, when you have quotes that we call it bulletin board material, that you wanted to play against the Golden State Warriors, and you don't come out with that venom in the first half, and you have 1 point. I know you picked it up later in the game, but one of the things that made Ant Edwards great in the last series was his impact on the game, just not defensively, but his ability to pass. And I felt like the first half, he was forcing the issue offensively. Now, he can recover in game 2, but I think you want to see that maturity to get other people involved and not force it offensively from your superstar.
Home teams are 0-5 in this round of the playoffs so far after last night. Monica, what did you make of that? What do you make of the Ant and the coach and all of this?
In his own way, I do think Ant acknowledges that he got off to a slow start.